This is Future Fork, a show that explores the world of food and the decisions we can make today that will shape our future. On the show, you'll hear from innovators in the food space. We'll have disruptive conversations with people from around the globe who are taking the lead on topics like food sustainability, ending world hunger, food security, and so much more. I'm your host, Paul Newnham. In this episode, we're talking to Richard Duncan, the CEO of the Niue Honey Company. Richard is a development economist who is helping to protect the world's bee population from his base in New Zealand. Today, we explore how this tiny island nation is playing a crucial role in global bee conservation. You'll hear the journey from economics to beekeeping, why Niue's bees are special, and how this remote paradise could help secure our food future. Let's get into it. So, Richard, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about what is Niue? Where is it? Most people maybe haven't heard of Niue.
Well, yeah, it's in the Pacific. It's a Pacific island. And so I'm based in New Zealand. Now I've got to do a lot of the marketing and company sort of management out of New Zealand. But my business partner, who's the beekeeper, is in Niue. So he's up there. So we're split between the two, and I come and go as I'm needed. And Niue, so I don't know if people know where New Zealand is. If you headed north from New Zealand, you hit Fiji, you hang a right, and you hit Samoa, Tonga, and then you keep going, and then you hit Niue. And then there's the Cook Islands, and it's French Polynesia. So it's a single island. It's a raised coral atoll. And I believe it's the largest raised coral atoll in the world. So quite a medium-sized Pacific island.
How many people live there?
It's only about 1,500, depending on, over Christmas it might swell to 2,000. But it's got a huge Niuean communities in New Zealand and Australia, probably 30 to 40,000.
How did the story start? How did you find yourself? You're from New Zealand, but how did you find yourself in Niue?
I studied as a development economist way back in the day. It was my first job. There was a little ad in the New Zealand Herald for a trade policy or an economist in Niue, so I applied and went up. So I had 2 years there in contract. And in those days, you had to fly up with Royal Tongan Airlines. So you were routed through Tonga. And as I was getting on the plane on the tarmac, some big larrikin behind me cracked a joke. And I turned around, and there was Andrew Corey, the honey man. We met on the same plane going in. And of course, we were on a small island together. He was a bachelor, and I was an effective bachelor because my wife was still getting herself sorted down in New Zealand. And so we kind of just hung around and made our own fun and became good friends. And so it was many years later. But when you go to a place like that and you're like Niue is a place you go, you get fully immersed in the community, and you sort of make friends and you know people and you have an association with them. But about 10 years ago, he gave me a call asking if I could help him launch a product. I guess effectively we were wanting to convert his business, which was a long-standing, like he'd been there since 99, sort of exporting bulk honey to New Zealand. But we wanted to create a social enterprise business model with a branded product, so have our own name out there. And on the flip side of that, to do the bee sanctuary. And in those intervening years, we had a bit of a fright because we saw what was happening around the world with colony collapse disorder and the bee die-offs. So we knew that the bees in Niue they'd been isolated there, were disease-free. So we kind of thought, we've got to get this bee sanctuary going. And so it started 10 years ago, believe it or not. I think it was 1 day a week or something, and then eventually full-time, yeah.
No, amazing. And so going from an economist to now running a bee business, that's a big shift.
It is. It's like I sometimes feel like on the commercial side, I'm painting by numbers, When you go and you're doing marketing and sales, as an economist, you kind of know generically and you know the theory behind it. But when you got to get out there and beat the pavement and do it and live according to the results in the private sector, yeah, it's a big change. And so I don't know if I'm fully there yet. I long for the day where we're that far advanced, I can hire staff, even though the company's been going effectively 25 years. We had our 25th anniversary actually last year. Really, it's kind of like still in a startup phase because we've just launched a product. We're just raising our visibility. We've just started the bee sanctuary and through a foundation. So you kind of got all those management issues you have with any startup. You're always short of funds, you're short of personnel. And so one day I'll be able to hire full-on sales and marketing rep who does it instinctively, more than me.
So you've got a foundation and a company.
Yeah.
And so the foundation is looking at what kind of areas?
So the foundation is going to be managing the bee sanctuary, whereas it's sort of like separating the two. They're linked, but the business can go on and try and follow its commercial objectives. And then with the personnel there and the foundation I guess that's probably where I sit more comfortably to look for partnerships, corporate partnerships, NGOs, funding agencies, donors to start funding the activities of the sanctuary. And that's become more than just Niue now. It's a Pacific-wide project. And certainly the social enterprise side of things, the commercial side of things will profit share back to that foundation and to the community in Niue.
No, it makes sense. So tell us a little bit. Let's dive into bees. Why are bees so important for our food system?
Bees are critical. I mean, you don't notice them, do you? They quietly go about their work. And yes, it's about honey and having a sweetener and alternatives to sugar and that sort of thing. But fundamentally, so they say, certainly in our part of the world, they pollinate, or they're responsible for a third of the foods we eat. And it's the things that are also much more nutritionally relevant, the fruits, the vegetables, the nuts. But even in New Zealand here, they're pollinating clover. So that has direct implications to pasture and the dairy industry. So they're a huge asset to any country. And what's happened is that bees internationally, it's a process of globalization. And, there's so many good things. There's also risks. And the risks are that, like with humans, but the bees have also had to cope with the spread of disease and parasites around the world. And so that gets into a country's bee stock, and it creates issues with mortality rates. Going back a few years, the US was losing 70-80% of its bees die-offs. And so people start to rethink not the price of honey. It's about, how do we pollinate our crops? And so in fact, it's happening again now. I've seen some recent papers from bee agencies in the States, and they're having a similar type levels over the last year. And so we knew that was happening. We didn't have issues in our part of the world. It's primarily been in the Northern Hemisphere, Europe and the US. But there's no reason why, colony collapse disorder may not get to Australia and New Zealand. We're already coping with increased spread of diseases. It's impacting beekeeping and numbers of bees, obviously. There's no feral bees now in New Zealand, for example. And I think in Australia, now that you've got mites that have hit there, it'll go down that track as well as New Zealand. So you manage bees and your beekeeping, your apiculture industry becomes hugely important.
And the reason for bees dying worldwide, what's the main causes?
Yeah, it's diseases. There's a host of diseases and parasites like varroa mite, American foul brood, European foul brood. There's a range of diseases, but it's also, I guess, called a modernization. It's urbanization, lack of forage. We've kind of, in the West at least, we've kind of moved towards like an industrial agricultural model. So you have huge big tracts of one particular variety, say an almond orchard. And so there's no forage other than that. And so, there's a whole lot of these sort of factors, and they all contribute, but it's not like there's one easy fix. If there was one problem you could identify, say, right, we'll solve that. But it's not. It's more to do with, I guess, modern living, certainly in the West, hard to fix in that circumstance.
So what does the future look like around bee breeding worldwide?
It's still critical to any economy. Here in New Zealand, we still have, thankfully, a reasonably solid core of experienced beekeepers. They know how to manage hives, although it's become increasingly difficult because they have to manage these diseases that have come here, like the varroa mite. As a beekeeper here, I've spent thousands of dollars on treatments, and those treatments are becoming less effective. As you can imagine, there's resistance gets built up over the years. They've had an influx of a wasp that's come here that's created problems. There seems to be a constant sort of barrage of factors that beekeepers have to battle with. But they're hugely important because if they give up, they say, well, it's too difficult. And a lot have, to be fair. It's too difficult. And a lot retire. And my concern has been that we promote beekeeping to attract new players into beekeeping. That's certainly huge for the Pacific, but it's also relevant to Australia, New Zealand, and the West, that, it is a hard yakka job, and there needs to be enough return in it, enough money in it, that people can make a decent living so that it becomes sustainable. Because if you take the beekeepers out of the equations, it's not just your honey you're going to miss. You're going to miss your fruits and vegetables. They'll all go through the roof price-wise. So, yeah, it's critical. And thankfully, New Zealand has got a solid core there. I often wonder in years to come, when that generation moves on, Are they bringing in new people into the industry and giving them the knowledge and structuring an industry that they can have a sustainable business in?
So, in terms of creating that sustainable business, I guess the Niue Honey Company has built a brand and they're selling the honey, and then you've got the foundation which is doing the work. How is that going?
You're going well. So we're, as I say, we've been around 25 years, or the company has, but we've only really been in the market for the last 3 years here in New Zealand. And it's really been, we wanted to, and this is probably true for a lot of agricultural products as generic as a business, we wanted to get away from just being a bulk commodity because you get caught in a low price. And we knew the honey was very good and special in Niue. So we wanted to be able to brand it ourselves and do a packaged product where we could not just get higher returns for what in Niue would be. We've got 2,500 hives. It's not a lot. It means a lot to some, not much in the global scheme of things. We wanted to get a best return for the social enterprise. So we wanted the gourmet, fine food. So and then have, as you see with that bottle, a canvas where we can tell our story about the bee. And so we're communicating as well about how special bees are. So that's going well. It went very well in New Zealand, but we're a niche product. We're a gourmet, higher priced niche product, and there's a limited market for that. It's very enthusiastic here in New Zealand, and but to scale that to get volume, we've just launched in Australia, in Melbourne, in a place called Whole Foods and Meatsmith, and I'm about to go over there in a month or two, and we'll start a sales rollout of the product in Australia, and then similarly for the US and for Europe, UK. So that's the key for us, is getting those high-end gourmet markets, and it's a lesson that we're trying to. On the flip side of the coin, yes, we're talking to the Pacific around apiculture and creating a thriving and sustainable industry, but it's also about part of that sustainability is them similarly going down that path and getting out of the bulk market and into, the consumers are now looking for safe food, they're looking for food that comes from a place that can show how pristine it is and willing to pay a premium. And I think that's key for a lot of certainly Pacific Island agriculture producers who have kind of been stuck in a bit of a commodity market, and because of the distance, it's played a real factor. Because if you're only really competing on a narrower margin, then in terms of your pricing, then it gets harder to manage. But so I'm hoping that there's a bit of a demonstration effect. The way we're doing it in Niue, organic certified, fine food but good food, and then also packaging it in a way that really attracts gourmet consumers and tells the story, about the Pacific, about Niue, about the bees. There's an education that's going on at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the most interesting experience or learning you've had since entering the bee business?
Well, I know how much I don't know, that's for sure. I've learned, here's to do with bees, everyone probably can relate to. I'm not a beekeeper, but, I go up periodically. In years gone past, I was up, consistently to help with the beekeeping activities. And I used to get so worn out. And I realized what was happening is that we all, well, not we all, but many do, have this childhood fear of a bee. It's not like if you're a child and you're running around the grass, oh, a bee, I'm going to get stung. And it just creates this psychology. And if you're doing metal work and you get a hot spark on your arm, you just flick it off and you keep going. You don't think twice about it. But, it's a bee sting, it's a bee. And so you can end up being really stressed in the bush, which I was. And the bees seem to know that. So I got over that stress. I'm not a child anymore, Richard. Grow up. It's just a sting if you get it. And and so it became much more enjoyable in my beekeeping. So there's those little lessons, like practical. And then I've just had to learn, as I've said, I don't come from the private sector. And so I've had to learn to cope. And it's learning to cope. I guess you're exposed much more, and certainly maybe because I'm leading this venture, you get exposed to all the issues and problems. You've got to know your mission, and you've got to just say, okay. And periodically I'll meet with other entrepreneurs and other people, and I'll have a discussion and realize we're all in the same boat. We're all struggling at times, but we all feel passionately about what we're trying to achieve. And it's about sort of encouraging each other, keep going. So if people out there are in my space, just find networks like that, people around you who can encourage you, because you're going to get your ups and downs, but you got to keep pushing through.
Find the hive.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. My next door neighbor's a beekeeper, so we benefit from the bees next door, but we don't have to do the work, which is kind of, I say I grow the flowers and he harvests the honey for me, or harvests the pollen. So look, we like to close these conversations off with a recurring question that we ask everyone. So What's your favorite food besides honey? You can't say honey.
I am a fan of Mexican food. I grew up in the States and I just can't shake it off. I'm a fan of Mexican food. And when I like to eat authentic Mexican food, if I'm ever in the States, I'll find those places where you can get proper tacos and that. And me and my sister are the same. We're our family kind of, our kids sort of say, "What are you doing?" We're eating refried beans and, and stuff like this. And mate, love it. It's just part of my upbringing. So that's probably my favorite food. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you, and all the best in the Niue Honey Company.
Thank you. Thank you. And anyone out there who wants to come to Niue and see some bees, just call in. If there's a yellow Land Rover parked outside the front of the honey house, we're in. Just bowl up and we can show you around.
Sounds great. Well, thank you, Richard.
Catch you, Paul.
You've been listening to Future Fork, a show that explores the world of food and the decisions we can make today that will shape our future. Future Fork is produced by Disruptive Consulting Solutions and supports the SDG2 Advocacy Hub. For more info, head to the website futureforkpodcast.com. This show was produced with strategy and production support from Wavelength Creative. So you don't miss an episode of Future Fork, make sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm Paul Newnham, and I'll see you in the next episode.